Hello, everybody, and we welcome you into another edition of the Penn's Iceberg radio program. As always, I'm your host, Casey Stamp, along with my partners, Luke Courtwright and Jason Kaczynski. Luke, always great to have you here. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Plenty of news to get to this evening, for sure.
Absolutely. Good to hear you're doing well, and always a treat to have you on the show. Jason, thanks so much for joining us here this evening. How's it going for you?
Not too bad. We're going through a little bit of a hockey withdrawal after the weekend games, but we'll get back at it Friday here.
Absolutely. And thanks so much again for being with us tonight. Well, folks, it's going to be a good one tonight, as always. We're going to begin with some game analysis of the Pens meeting with the LA Kings just a few short days ago. We're going to have a live report from Los Angeles as well. That was post-game from the Staples Center. We're going to be discussing the latest with the realignment talks and who could be moving there. We're going to be bringing you all the latest injury updates, and as always, we'll finish off with some game prediction. Don't go anywhere. We've got a great show coming your way next on the Pens Iceberg. Welcome back. First off, we've got some breaking news to start here out of Pittsburgh, as the Pens have traded forward Mark Letestu to the Columbus Blue Jackets for a fourth-round draft pick in the 2012 entry draft that is to be held at Consol Energy Center in Pittsburgh. Luke, we'll start with you here. What do you think of the value of this exchange? A fair deal both ways?
Well, for the Pens, if they couldn't get anything via a trade, you would think they were going to waive Mark Letestu coming up here. So I would argue that it's a win in the minds of Pens management. Turning an undrafted, unrestricted free agent into a mid-range draft pick it's a nice little move. Nothing really gonna shake things up too much, but with the deep draft on the horizon, I think it's a good move for sure. Columbus, on the other hand, they really need to do something here. Haven't pulled the plug on their coach yet, but it was pretty clear that they needed to make a move. Although it's kind of strange because they are a very deep team down the middle, so I'm not sure what it means for them going forward.
I definitely agree. I'm with Luke on this one. It may signal another move to come here from Columbus. For Pittsburgh, it gives them an asset to use, whether it's at the trade deadline or the draft next year. Columbus, they're currently last in the league, so obviously it would be the first pick in the fourth round. Not a bad pick to have. And Letestu, who was signed here as a free agent, basically, you got something for nothing. Otherwise, you're exposing him to waivers. You definitely will lost him for nothing. So it's a good asset management by Ray Shero.
Absolutely, and as Luke mentioned, haven't pulled the plug on the head coach yet, or the goaltender Steve Mason. Possibly things to come. Steve Mason certainly not showing lately that he's capable of heading that goalie unit. Certainly Mark Letestu made his presence known to the NHL teams last year with his solid play last season. Jason, what impact, if any, will this trade have on either side?
Well, it's hard to say from Columbus' standpoint. If I'm actually Columbus, I would probably listen to any and all offers, and at this point, you might even have to look at offers for Rick Nash or some of your top-end talent. I mean, you're going to probably look at blowing it up and starting over. I know they spent a bit of money in the off-season to shore up what holes they thought they had, but it's fallen apart for them pretty quickly. For Pittsburgh, I think the impact is that obviously we're going to be getting a forward back, hopefully at some point, whether that's Sidney Crosby or Tyler Kennedy, and it opens up some more playing time for Dustin Jeffrey, who probably needs it coming off the knee injury, and he's working his way back into the lineup.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Jeffrey once he gets back from this conditioning stint in Wilkes-Barre. But looking at Mark Letestu, last year he gained a spot in the lineup because he was great on faceoffs from the right side, and he was putting up some pretty decent numbers. Those numbers clearly weren't there this year. Really not standing out at either end of the ice. Joe Vitale and Richard Park come in and they're out doing outstanding on faceoffs, putting a few points on the board. Nothing really too great, but for fourth liners, pretty respectable numbers. They're going to need that roster spot going forward. So it was pretty clear that something was going to happen here. I don't think it's going to be too much of a big deal for Pittsburgh, unless number 87 finds himself in the lineup here pretty shortly. Columbus, on the other hand, they need to do something. I'm not sure that Mark Letestu is really going to turn their fortunes around, but you would think this is the first of several things to come for them.
And I suppose that brings us to our next question here. Do you think that this type of trade or move could be an indication of the Pens trying to clear out space for a possible return to play for Sidney Crosby on Friday against the Dallas Stars?
I think that's one way to look at it. Of course, Tyler Kennedy also out of the lineup. Maybe he's close. You haven't really heard a whole lot about him. As we said, Dustin Jeffrey sent down today on a conditioning stint while I'm with Steve McIntyre. Maybe that'll be a quick one. He'll be back up Friday, trying to pick up some more minutes here in the lineup. But as far as Crosby goes, I don't think we're going to know if he's going to play until Friday morning. But for Columbus, it was pretty clear they needed to do something soon, so I think that kind of pushed this move forward if it was, in fact, for Crosby.
It definitely was well timed on both clubs' parts. With Sid, we've been hearing rumors for months now about his possible return, and ever since he's been absorbing contact in practice. But Friday is the first game where he hasn't ruled himself out, so definitely a good sign. I guess the devil's advocate to that is they do play back-to-back Friday and then Saturday at Carolina, so I don't know if they would want to jump him into the back-to-back situation right off the bat, but who knows. But it probably is a good indicator that he's coming back fairly shortly.
And well, we certainly wish Mark Letestu all the best going forward as he moves on to Columbus. And in other news, we would like to remind you all that our website is up. That is pensicebergradio.com. That's the URL. It was completed on Saturday, and we'd love you to check it out. It's got all the latest Penguins news, stats, injury updates, as well as a full forum where you can discuss the Pens and the NHL in general. It's got bonuses like wallpapers and our newest feature, the Iceberg Hall of Fame, which for all you Penguins fanatics out there who know a lot about Pens history, we think you'll really love it. And of course, our shows will be on there as well. So definitely check it out. We promise you won't be disappointed. Saturday night, the Pittsburgh Penguins traveled to Los Angeles to take on the LA Kings in what turned out to be one of the most entertaining games of the year thus far. In the first period, Penn's able to get some offense going as Steve Sullivan would grab his first goal of the season, assisted by Chris Letang and James Neal. Jason, how will this affect the confidence of Steve Sullivan going forward to know that he's finally got that big first goal and he can just move on and continue and have fun and play his game out there?
It's huge. As a player and a goal scorer, anytime that you go through a slump, you really don't care how that slump ends, whether it's a garbage goal and then being that air power play shorthanded. It really doesn't matter. And Steve Sullivan, he got the monkey off his back with just a beautiful feed from Letang. I like Steve Sullivan's presence this year. I like what he brings on the power play. He brings the puck up the ice and creates a lot of space for the other forwards. He fits in well, with playing with Malkin and Neal. He's definitely, his pass first attitude is welcome, but he's definitely someone who can put the puck in the net. So he's going to continue to roll here.
Agreed completely. I think it's really difficult to overstate what Steve Sullivan has meant to this team. I think this goal, it's a benefit to his psyche, but you'd have to imagine that management has been really thrilled with his play so far. Comes in on a $1.5 million contract, which right now looks like a total bargain. But his play without the puck has just been incredible. We've harped on the Penguins power play for the last several years, having a ton of talent, but not really getting to that next level. The penalty kills always has gotten better, but now with the power play there, it's been otherworldly almost. Steve Sullivan, just his play without the puck, opening space for, I guess, the Penguins' real stars, quote unquote, has been just invaluable to this team.
And I'm sure it's a major relief to Steve as well to get that scoreless streak behind him. Also in the first period, Chris Kunitz got absolutely hammered from behind by Ethan Moreau of the Kings, who was later fined $2,500 for the hit. And, of course, again, last night, he hit a member of the San Jose Sharks. basically the same way as he hit Kunitz. Luke, what do you think of this hit, and what do you think of the fine to Ethan Moreau?
Well, it was pretty funny because just before we started doing the show tonight, I had to go back and watch it because it wasn't that bad to me in the sense where I really remembered it as being terrible. I think the boarding penalty is still there for a reason. Looking at this fine, $2,500 for a pro hockey player really isn't too much, but this will go on his record. So I didn't see the hit against San Jose, so we'll see if there's action taken on that, because now this fine will be included in Brendan Shanahan's further reviews on hits.
This is definitely one of the hits I think they're going to try to take out of the game, and it looks at, there is a boarding penalty already for it, but Kunitz didn't do himself any favors putting himself in a vulnerable situation, but Morel has to recognize that, someone has their head down, and, I believe Kunitz was trying to either pick up the puck with his hand or just try to move it a little bit, but and he just got caught, and he was clearly dazed, and when it immediately happened, it looked like he possibly could have got concussed, and who knows if he would have been on the lineup for a game or two, maybe it would have been worthy of a suspension. But it'll be interesting now to see what Brendan Shanahan does with the repeat offender, so to speak, with the hit in San Jose. So we'll see what he gets now.
Definitely. It'll be interesting to see what Brendan Shanahan does in the following days. And I have to say, I was literally sitting inches away from where the hit took place. The sound of the crash on the boards was absolutely deafening. Now, from my perspective, again, I was right there. Ethan Moreau looked Chris Kunitz right in the numbers back of the jersey, didn't let up, knew he was going to play the puck. As you mentioned, Jason, Chris Kunitz didn't do himself any favors with the way he played the puck. Kind of had his head down. You always have to expect to be hit. And that's the bottom line. In the National Hockey League, you're going to expect hits because it's a physical game, and you could have done a little bit of a better job preparing for the hit. But in any case, it appeared to me to be a targeted elbow to the head and a dirty hit, and something that there's absolutely no excuse for. Chris Kunitz actually looked me right in the eyes as he was getting up, and I'm not going to lie, I was concerned for Chris, whether he could hear me or not. I shouted some words of encouragement to him, and it was clear from the look in his eyes, in the eyes of Chris Kunitz, that he definitely got his bell rung on this hit, and it definitely left him loopy, no two ways about it. In any case, no more offense in the first period, but in the second period, the Kings gained some momentum and fought hard to get their first goal of the night, as it would be Anze Kopitar on an awesome backhand, putting it past Marc-Andre Fleury, and that would be assisted by Matt Green and Justin Williams. Third period, just 9.5 minutes left in regulation. Mike Richards would be taken down from behind on a breakaway. It was actually a shorthanded breakaway. He would get a penalty shot, but ultimately would miss wide, and the game would remain tied for the time being. However, just a few minutes later, it would be Simone Gagne who would score and put the Kings on top 2-1. Jason, was there some sort of defensive breakdown from the Penguins towards the end of the first to the late third?
Definitely. There was a breakdown from a team standpoint, a team defensive standpoint, and there's also a breakdown from the D-men. You had Robert Bertuzzo playing in his first ever NHL game, and he clearly was, visibly nervous, and maybe rightfully so. And Alexander Picard getting his first taste of NHL action this year. So they were playing. Coach Baldwin was a little tentative, I think, in getting them major minutes and keeping the top pairings out there. At the same time, the one nice thing about the Penguins is they can play any style. They can go north-south. They can grind out a win. They can be physical. But the game in San Jose 2 nights prior was pretty physical, and it was clear that the Kings were trying to really put the body to the Pens D-men throughout this game. So I think they looked tired, and it just took a toll on the team.
I would agree heavily on the tired part. They were tired, frustrated. Both Bortuzzo and Picard played under 11 minutes in this game. Chris Letang played over 32, almost 33 minutes. That game in San Jose was very physical. You figure the back and forth across the country with these road trips, the on and off games. We've seen lots of games in a few days and then some spaces here. So I think that they were tired to some extent. Chris Letang especially. Didn't see a lot of Bortuzzo or Picard. So I definitely do think it was in their legs for sure.
And absolutely, as we talk about being a little bit fatigued and getting up there in ice time, of Evgeny Malkin was there, played more ice time than I've ever seen him play this season thus far. You'd even hear a lot of Kings fans mention it. Who's that 71 guy? He seems to be on the ice for every shift. So obviously, Evgeny Malkin definitely got his work in that game. With just 2:57 left in regulation, it would be Chris Kunitz with some late game heroics to tie the game at 2 off a pass from behind the net from Jordan Stahl, and the game would go to overtime. No scoring in overtime, although the Pens had to weather a ferocious storm in OT as the Kings had a number of chances at one point as the Pens were unable to clear the puck from their zone or make a change. The game would ultimately go to a shootout where Marc-Andre Fleury would stop Jarrett Stoll before being scored on by Andrei Kopitar. Meanwhile, Evgeny Malkin unsuccessful in his shootout attempt, but Chris Letang, one of the best shootout defensemen I've ever seen, would squeeze under the pads of LA goaltender Jonathan Quick to score his first shootout goal of the game. Fleury would then stop Dustin Brown and Simone Gagne on their shots, while James Neal would be stopped on his, but it was Chris Kunitz who ruled on this night in his attempt in the shootout. He would score and win it 3-2 for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and a much-needed rebound win after losses to the Sharks and the Toronto Maple Leafs. How important was this for the Pens to get a well-deserved W after a couple of tough losses, Luke?
I think it was incredibly important. A lot of these back-and-forth road trips, this one being kind of a shorter one, across the country, flying back home from Los Angeles, you definitely want to have those good mental vibes going. Picking it up in the shootout especially, their last couple of showings have been kind of iffy there. They're on retreat this week. There's 6 days in between games. I think for a hockey player it can be easy to dwell on a loss. So I think it's really important to pick up that win.
Definitely. Anytime you can come out of albeit a short road trip, 3 points, with 4 points on the board, I think is a good thing. Especially in places where they got a point in the shootout in San Jose, a place they haven't had a lot of success over the years. They haven't had a win there since 1997, surprisingly. So, and they have a lot of injuries right now. A lot of players are banged up, and it's just a good chance to get the points, go home, get some rest, and play again here on Friday.
And Chris Kunitz would be our Pens Iceberg player of the game. We had a live report from the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California. Post-game, check it out. Hello, this is Casey Stamp reporting live from the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California, where the Pittsburgh Penguins have just defeated the Los Angeles Kings by the final score of 3-2 in the shootout. A great atmosphere here tonight, a great place to watch hockey in Los Angeles and the Staples Center. Great fans here, always a pleasure. Chris Kunitz, our Iceberg performer of the game tonight, as he scored in both regulation and in the shootout to win it, ultimately for the Pittsburgh Penguins. A strong defensive effort as always tonight for Pittsburgh. A lot of East-West hockey, even more so than we usually see. A great effort from the Kings as well. Chris Kunitz got boarded. Looks like something that might come of a suspension for Ethan Moreau, who originally took the boarding penalty. From the Staples Center live in Los Angeles, this is Casey Stamp. Back to the studio. So there was our live report from LA, and it was just a fantastic great game to be at, and just a great time there as well. Staples Center, always a great place to go and watch a hockey game. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to talk realignment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, folks. All right, so realignment talks continue to rage on. So many ideas as far as who to move where. It seems all but certain that Detroit will be moving over to the Eastern Conference, and we've also heard talks of Columbus coming to the East as well, while the Winnipeg Jets will be headed out west. Jason, what's the latest that you've heard on the realignment details?
There's a lot of proposals, and it seems like every fan has a proposal as well, and which is fine. But one of the things that I've seen pop up from a lot of the national columnists is the two divisions of the East basically would take Pittsburgh out of the traditional Atlantic Division rivalries, particularly with Philadelphia, and sort of place them in to the old Northeast division. Would be Ottawa, Toronto, Boston, Buffalo, Montreal, and either Detroit or Columbus and Pittsburgh. And then you have the traditional Atlantic, going to this would be like a 4-team NHL realignment rather than the 6 divisions that we have now. And the second division in the East would be Philly, the Rangers, New Jersey, the Islanders, Washington, Florida, Carolina, and Tampa. That's the early going. It seems like they sort of are going to split up the Pittsburgh-Philly rivalry, which is not a good thing for us, but we'll see what the Board of Governors decides.
And certainly we have heard talks about Pittsburgh losing out in this realignment process as they may be separated from their cross-state rival, the Philadelphia Flyers. Luke, how would it affect both teams to lose this rivalry?
I mean, it would suck, quite honestly. The way I'm looking at it is you got to think all 4 other teams in the Atlantic right now would be against this, because when you have the Sidney Crosby traveling circus rolling into town how many times a year, that's ticket revenue for them. So when this comes to the Board of Governors here, you have 4 teams who are going to vote against that. Of course, that's only you would think the Penguins would vote against it too, but so that's 5 out of 30 teams. I'm not sure how far you can go with that. It would be huge. I think the easiest thing would be bumping Nashville over the Southeast, but that's another argument altogether.
As we've said, so many ideas being thrown around here, and one of which, as you mentioned, is Nashville moving over to the Southeast Division, or which would be one of the 2 divisions in Jason's suggested realignment plan. So basically a complete breakup of the Central Division. And if that were to happen, leaving only St. Louis and Chicago behind. When you talk about the Central Division, you're talking about a division that's absolutely stacked with talent. You could argue 4 playoff contenders in that division. If Detroit, Columbus, and Nashville were to leave the Central Division, one other big loser in this realignment plan would be the Chicago Blackhawks, traditionally one of the highest attendance rates year in and year out, especially after their Stanley Cup win in 2010. But what would it do to the Chicago Blackhawks to lose those teams, Luke?
Well, for those who don't know, I happen to live in the city of Chicago. So I look at it like this. You do lose the Detroit rivalry altogether pretty much, because you figure they're only, depending upon how things shape up with the scheduling, they might not even see them every year. So it would suck to lose that rivalry. But when you look at it, the Chicago Blackhawks sell out every game. It's tough to even get tickets to the preseason games. So I wouldn't be worried about it short-term ticket-wise or anything like that. It's more of the kind of media build-up and playing off of that.
I would agree wholeheartedly. I think ever since Rocky Wirtz took over operating the Blackhawks from his father, there's been a renaissance, a hockey renaissance, if you will, in the city of Chicago. The games are on TV. They're being sold out. They're bringing back a lot of the alumni, Bobby Hall, Stan Mikita, Dennis Savard, into the fold, so to speak, and they're doing appearances, and plus it's a great team on the ice. So I don't know if it hurts Chicago as much as it does some other teams. Chicago could definitely, they're in a good situation right now where they can thrive regardless of where they go.
And as we said, right now the realignment talk's still in the early stages. No plan has been set as of yet. How much weight do you think the NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman puts on traveling distance and traveling convenience versus maintaining some of the NHL's best rivalries for all 30 teams? And Jason, we'll start with you.
I think there's some weight. The one thing you're going to have to decide at the end of the day is that you're never going to make everyone happy. There's always going to be someone who's not happy where they're at, or they're traveling too much, or their division is not based too much on geography. From a business standpoint, I think right now less is more, because I'm sure Gary Bettman likes having the Wings and the Blackhawks as 2 original 6 franchises in the West. I know they're in the Eastern time zone. You have 17 teams, I believe, that are in the Eastern time zone, so someone has to move. But having those marquee draws in the conference is good for balance for the league. And one of the things you have to remember that when the Penguins came into the league, they were actually in the West, so they've bounced around a lot, and things aren't permanent. Things they can change. I think just little tweaks right now would be better than a full blown realignment.
Yeah, you're never going to get this perfect, no matter how you do it. Both Columbus and Detroit would love to get in the Eastern Conference, to the point where I think they were actually both promised that at some point. Like I mentioned previously, I think Nashville would be the easiest move. I don't know if ease is what they're going for. I would think it would be. This has to pass through the Board of Governors, so it's about as making many people happy as you can. You're not going to get all 30 governors on the same realignment strategy. I think if you're going to isolate someone, Denver's got to be the one, Colorado Avalanche, because it's airport traffic. It's the fifth most busiest airport in the world, apparently. I looked that up. And if you put them in with the four Western Canadian teams, I think you can make a division out of that. There's been some people against that, whether or not an all Canadian division would work, if anyone else would want to play in that division. And then you can also move Minnesota over to the Central Division. Again, I don't think there's any way you can make this perfect, but it's making as many people happy as you can.
Well, we certainly all hope that no matter what moves are made, there will still be plenty of high-intensity rivalries and competitive games ahead in the future. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, injury updates and game predictions. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Casey Stemp here alongside Jason Kaczynski and Luke Courtright. Latest injury updates, Sidney Crosby rumored to be returning to play on Friday against the Dallas Stars, of course. We discussed that a bit last week, but Sid says while he hasn't ruled it out, it's status quo for now. Nothing is set in stone. Tyler Kennedy continues to practice with the team, hoping to see him back in action soon. Matt Niskanen expected to play Friday against the Dallas Stars after missing the game in Los Angeles. He was suffering some swelling after taking a hard shot to the ankle against the San Jose Sharks. Ben Lovejoy and Zbigniew Mikulek both out. Ben Lovejoy with his broken wrist and Mikulek with his broken finger. And that'll bring us on to game prediction. And a lot of buzz surrounding Friday night's game, obviously pertaining to Sidney Crosby. But all that aside, still an extremely exciting game as the Penguins face off with the best in the West, the Dallas Stars. Luke, we'll start with you. What do you expect to see in this matchup?
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes with Crosby. Fingers crossed. But Dallas, they're a very mobile team, especially from the back end. You think Trevor Daley, Stefan Robidas, Alex Goligoski, I think we're pretty familiar with him. But then there's a lot of underlying storylines to them, too. They're off to a really good start. Jamie Benn's breaking out like a lot of people thought he would. And then Sheldon Surrey's come back from the minor leagues to go on a tear. Kari Lehtinen standing on his head. This is going to be a tough game. I'm going to say 3-2 Pens, maybe even extra time.
Well, hopefully it doesn't end. We don't get a Matt Niskanen and Sidney Crosby fight like we did last year. That would be a little disappointing to see. But Dallas Stars are surprising right now. They get a lot of offense from the D. They're a physical team, and even despite losing Brad Richards, they've been pretty deep. Got some good young forwards, and Kari Lehtinen is just he's another tall goalie that the Pens are going to have to pepper with shots. But the Pens are coming from back home after a long delay here. I'm not even sure when the last home game was, but I think they're in the mood for some home cooking. And if Sid returns, there's going to be just a huge emotional boost from that. So I'll say 4-2 Pens.
Absolutely, and by the way, it's good to see the Dallas Stars doing so well after Brad Richards leaves Dallas, and a little bit of a connection there with Philly. Both named Richards, both leaving their teams, both have young stars like Jamie Benn and Claude Giroux stepping up in the wake. So, a little bit of similarities there. Absolutely, and we look forward to a very entertaining game with the Dallas Stars, and even more so if Sid does return. The following night, Pens are in Raleigh to take on the Hurricanes. Jason, we'll start with you this time. How do you see this game unfolding?
The Hurricanes right now are a little depleted among the forward group. Eric Staal does not look like the same player without Eric Cole, who signed with Montreal in the offseason. Jeff Skinner's a good young goal-scoring forward, but other than that, and they have Chad LaRose, but not too many forwards to speak of. They do have Cam Ward, who's been pretty consistent for them, former Conn Smythe winner. I'd give a slight goaltending edge to Pittsburgh at this point. Even in the last couple of losses, Marc-Andre Fleury's played really well, and I see the Pens having just a little bit more offense.
I agree on pretty much all counts there. I'm not someone who puts a lot of stock into statistics, particularly plus minus. But Eric Staal is a minus 16. Minus 16. I don't even know how to explain it. Even watching the game tonight, he took a shot off the foot, but even before that, he was pretty much a non-factor. So when this team is built around Skinner and Staal up front to begin with, and you have Eric Staal disappearing, I can't have a lot of faith in that lineup. Like Jason said, they're extremely thin at forward. LaRose, Jokinen, not really a whole lot after that. Their D is pretty solid. Brought in Thomas Caberlet. Not a huge Caberlet fan, but their depth at forward, it's just killing them. I'm going to go 4-1 Pens.
And certainly not used to seeing Eric Staal at minus 16, one of the NHL's highest paid players, one of the premier captains in the league. Certainly Carolina hoping he could pick it up, and certainly some tough and entertaining games upcoming for Pittsburgh. All right, folks, well, that's all the time we have for this week. We thank you all so much, as always, for tuning in. Luke, thanks so much for being here, and we look forward to talking with you in 2 weeks' time as we have a programming break next week.
Yeah, I would hope Crosby's back by then, maybe.
Let's hope so. And Jason, always a pleasure having you as well. See you right back here in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Hopefully, Sid Centurion will give us quite a bit to talk about, I'm sure.
Let's hope so. And, of course, Pens fans hoping so as well. This is your host, Casey Stamp, signing off. And from all of us here at the Pens Iceberg, have a great night and a great week.